Hello everyone, welcome to Tech Frank. This is Frank Fernandez. Today we are going to create a basic Spring Boot web application. As you know, the Spring Boot is the most used Java framework around the IT industry. In this tutorial, I will be covering how to create a basic Spring Boot CRUD operation. So let's get started. First, we will go to start.spring.io. This is a Spring initializer which will help us to create an initial building block for our Spring Boot application. So in the type of project we will be selecting Maven. Maven and Gradle are the project management tool which help us to compile, test, develop and deploy our project. So it has various dependencies. So it is mainly used for handling the dependencies which we will be adding over here. And you don't need to worry about the updates and also that is handled by this project management tool. And then this is the language Java. Then the version of Spring Boot we will be using most stable version as others are in the beta version. Then group can be your organization name, like I will be using TechFrank over here. Then the name of the project. For this tutorial I will be creating basic employee management system, and you can see the package name is created over here. Then packaging jar or var, it is mostly used for deployment purpose when you are deploying your changes to this server. Then the version of Java, I will keep it 17 as it 17 is installed in my local. Then we will add the dependencies. So as we are creating a Spring web backend, so Spring Web will be needed. Then for database, I will be using H2. H2 is an in-memory database, whereas Spring Boot has various database related distinct libraries like MySQL, then Microsoft SQL, this MS SQL Server driver or Postgres and many others like MySQL as well. So for this tutorial I'll be using H2 databases. Later on I will show you with the MySQL or Microsoft SQL. Then we'll be needing a JPA repository which will help us for co- converting our uh, classes into SQL queries. So Spring Data JPA will be used. Then Lombok will be used to reduce our boilerplate code. Like you don't need to write getters and setter. I will explain you later what it is. Then for this example, I will be putting validator, Hibernate validator, which will validate the data which is coming from the front end side, from the client side, whether it is a valid data or not. I will only cover the positive scenario in this tutorial. So I will not explain much on the validation side. This is just for the knowledge purpose. I am using it. So I will click on generate. So as you can see that image zip file is downloaded. We will extract it and load it into the IntelliJ IDE. So I have extracted the full the zip file and I will be loading that in the IntelliJ IDE. Open the project, then in the downloads, AMS, and let's open. So as you can see that the plugins are getting downloaded from the Maven repository. So as you can see the group ID which was given was a TechFrank, the artifact ID which is the name of the project which is EMS, and other things are getting downloaded. Sometimes it takes times. Or we can do one thing, just write mvn clean install. This way it will start downloading all the repositories from the Maven repo. So as you can see the build is success. So let's get started. So we will be removing this starter test as we are not gonna cover that scenario in this. So before heading towards the coding part, we will go through the basic architecture of Spring Boot. So you can see in the architecture, the client sends and request to the controller. Controller is the presentation layer which handles the HTTP requests, processes them, and return responses. So the controller layer consumes the request sent from the client side and then processes it and sends it to the server side. In the service layer, sorry, the service layer contains the business logic and communicates between the controller and repository. See, all the validation and business logics are handled over the service layer. Then, depending on the business logic, it processes the data and sends it to the repository layer. Repository layer then saves it the data into the database. As you can see, the interacts with the database using Spring Data JPA or other ORM framework. ORM is the object relational mapping, the class which will be created in the of the model. So it will be converted into a table in your respective database, as I had explained while the Spring initializer part, where it will automatically sorry, it will automatically convert it into your respective database, which can be MySQL, Microsoft SQL tables. And persistence layer manages that transaction and entity relationship. Then the advantage of Spring Boot is like starter and auto configuration, which provides built-in dependencies and configures component automatically the embedded server. So you don't need to add the server like Tomcat and this thing. It will be the Spring Boot starter pack comes with that. So let's get started. So first we'll create a model class. So model is over here. So first we'll create that. So first we'll create a package of model and class that will be employee, as we are creating employee management system. Then I will annotate it with entity, then at the rate table. So entity is where it will convert our employee class into object relational mapping. So we are telling it to the JPA repository. Then table name we will be naming it as employee underscore details, which will be a table in the H2 database. Then we'll be using at Lombok for this, for the getter and setter. So what is getter and setter? Like when you're creating a variable, for every variable which will be a private, whereas getter and setter will be used for as a public, where it you have to write it down, so it will be a long way. So to reduce that boilerplate code, at the rate data will be used, or you can use at the rate getter and at the rate setter. Otherwise, to reduce the annotation, you can use iterate data. Then all arg constructor means all argument constructor and no arguments constructor, which is basically like employ with the empty constructor and all arguments which are there in the employee, that constructor. So first we will create the primary key, which is along the ID, which is the employee ID. We'll annotate with the ID, and then we will generate the value, because this will not be sent from the client side. And the strategy we can select, so it can be identity, auto, or sequence. I will keep it as sequence so that it will be generated in a sequential manner based on the data sent from the client side in the first in first out. Then the name of the employee, that is name. So we will be using validator, so not blank constraint would be used. Then if it is the name is blank, it will throw an error. So but in this tutorial I will not be covering the exception part. The name field cannot be blank. This is only for knowledge purpose I am using, as I said before. Then string email, which we'll also do using validator as email validation is message. Then uh, kindly enter a valid email address. Then is the integer, then the salary of the employee. We will ensure that the minimum salary is 10,000. Otherwise, throw an error message as salary cannot be lesser than less than 10,000. And you can also put as max value how much you want to keep, but I will not be using it because we are not committing the validator part. So as you can see that we have created the ORM for our table, employee table. So let's go ahead with the repository layer. So I will create a new package, repository. So in that there will be a new interface which will be employee repository. So employee repository will extend another interface which will be a JPA repository. So JPA repository where we'll pass our employee model and long will be the ID which is the primary key of our employee. So that will be used in this, and which will this JPA repository extends the CRUD repository, which will create a create, read, and update, delete for your uh, respective MySQL respective SQL server based on the SQL which we will be using. Then I will be creating the service layer. So first we'll create the interface of the service, which is a part of separation of concerns like the abstraction where you will be hiding the implementation details. So first we'll create the interface of employee service where we'll be saving the data, save employee, which will have employee. Then we will send the list of all the employee, which will be get all employees. Then you will be returning the get employee by ID, a specific employee. We will be passing long ID on this. Then yeah, for update also we will be using save employee. In that will be then the delete employee. So for delete will be void delete employee by ID, which will again use long ID as a parameter. So basically first we are creating the interface of the service layer because to maintain the separation of concern, and then we'll be creating the IMPL class, a service IMPL, which will inherit the employee service interface service IMPL. So it will implement employee service. So as it is throwing error, we will implement this method, and you can see that all the methods are get down. Then we will auto hire the employee repository over here. So in we can do the field injection like uh, like this. So this is not mostly used. Mostly the constructor injection is used. So for this tutorial, to make it easy, I will be using field injection. So because the constructor injection is better used for unit test, writing unit tests, but field injection is the easier part. So we will save the employee. So you can see that all the methods are generated by the JPA repository. So imply that ref get find all, which will return the list of all the employees. Then employee by ID, which is before it used to be get by ID. Now you can see the get reference by ID. So it will return the employee based on the ID provided. Then we'll be deleting the employee, which will be employee delete by ID. So we'll pass the ID. So as you can see, our service layer is completed. Then I will show the constructor injection in the controller part, how to do that. So we will create a controller now. Employee controller. So first we'll annotate the controller by REST controller, then request mapping, which will be slash employee. Then we will inject the employee service interface in this, which will hide the implementation detail of the employee service IMP like that. So private. So we will do doing constructor injection for employee service. Private final employee service. As you can see, it is throwing an error as we have not initialized it. But you can see that we have added the constructor parameter for this. Then we will auto wire it. So this is how constructor injection is done compared to the field injection we have done over here. Then we will be first saving the employee. So public void save employee. So we'll be using request body for saving our employee. Then employee service dot save employee, it will pass the employee. Then it will be a post mapping. If you are sending something from the client side in the JSON format, we will be using post mapping. Then we will be returning the list of employees. So where we'll get all employees. Employee service dot get all employees. So this will be a get mapping. So these are REST API tools as we are returning it. Then we will be returning the employee get employee by ID, which will be a path variable long ID, which will return employee.service get by employee ID and will pass the ID. And this will be get mapping. So path variable will be getting from ID. So it will be employee slash ID, the number which will be passed of the employee ID. Then we will be doing put mapping, which will Again, do the same thing as public void employee, so request body will take same employee.service.save. So this will be containing the ID of the employee in this. In the first part, we are not passing the ID. So in this ID will be passed and it will be put mapping. Then delete mapping. Before that, we'll create a method required delete by employee ID. That will be request body. Sorry, what it will be path variable. It will be long ID. Oh, sorry, my bad. So it will be delete mapping and it will then the ID and employee service dot delete by employee ID. So like this it is done, and when clean install, which will complete it. Okay, I did some mistake, I suppose. Jupyter does not exist. Find some application test. Okay, so I had deleted the test. I will delete it so that we don't get the issue. So as you can see, build is success. So before going ahead, I will be configuring the H2 database. So for that, we will go to resources and application properties. So we will set the H2 configuration in the application properties. So let's spring dot data source dot URL. So we'll be setting the schema name of our database. So which will be JDBC, then the connection will be H2 and name, which is in memory database, then the name of the DB, which will be employee DB, then spring dot data source dot driver class name. So we'll mention our driver class and that will be h2 dot driver. Ensure that this D will be capital, otherwise it will get an error. Because then then the username, which will be test, then password, which will be test123. Then we will enable the h2 console. So dot console dot enabled is true. Then the URL of the h2 console, where we will be checking our database is inserted into table or not. Then this is for some people, there might be an issue which can be thrown. For that we'll be putting this dialect database platform. So it will be org.hibernate.dialect.h2 dialect. Error required bin of time employee service. Oh, I forgot to put the thread service over here. Go and put the service so that it is considered. As you can see, the our Tomcat has started on 8080 and the H2 console is on the this thing. So first we'll open the Postman. Before that we'll check our H2 console. So localhost 8080 H2 underscore console. So as you can see, it is loaded. Password. So you can see the employee details table is there inside the employee DB schema, and you can see it is empty. So we will run and check. As you can see over here, then we will send some data, that is name. Now we are using email, I suppose. Let me check in the model. So we can see it is email, and then salary. So okay, it is get for say sending the request, for creating the request you have to send the post. Yes, you can see the 200. Okay, let's check whether it went into our table or not. So you can see that our this thing is inserted into the table. Then we'll insert more data like Susan and Susan, and we'll put some salary. So you can see that the Susan is also went. Then we will do the get. So you can see two employees we have got by the name ID. So by mentioning the ID, let's say 2, we'll get the employee. Okay, we have got an error. Let's check what is the error. So let's debug and check where is the issue. So first we will run this debugger and we will set it to the get employee by ID. It is started. So when we run our Spring Boot application again, that time our data gets lost. So we have to insert our data again. So I will be inserting Frank again. So as you can see, we have got Frank. Then we will add Susan as well. So get is also working fine. So get by ID. Okay, so our path variable is working fine. So there is no issue with the path variable. Then I will click on F7 and go inside. Okay, so I have been using get reference by ID. So get reference by ID is used when we want to return the reference of the table. So in the more entity class, there is various references like one to many, many to many. That reference is returned. I forgot. I thought that it will return the employee of the specific ID. So else throw and runtime error, runtime exception. So this way it will reload the file. So I will do compile and reload the file. Then I will do it again. So let's see. This time Susan, get the Susan or not. Go inside. Let's see. Okay, where the Susan is written. So I will remove the debugger and show to you again. So as you can see, we have got Susan over here, and we will check get all employees. Then we will delete the employees. Let's say we will delete Susan. As you can see, Susan is deleted. So we will do get. It will get all the employees. See, only Frank is there. If we try to access the Susan, error will be thrown. So that's all from my side. Next time I will cover the exception handling, like 500 internal server error should not be thrown. That time we will be sending a perfect logically error using the validator in this. Thank you very much. I hope you have understood what all things will be needed for creating a basic Spring Boot application.